Hello, I'm Hextera and welcome to a healing guide on Holy Paladins. So far in Phase 2, Holy Paladins have received a lot of improvements, and although we still lack some mobility, we have some abilities now to counter that weak point. Generally, Paladins are a great support class, only further increased when going Holy. The main strength of a Holy Paladin is Illumination, which is a talent that makes any critical heal with Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock cost no mana, essentially building high spell crit paired with mana per 5 makes Holy Paladins have one of the healthiest mana pools out of all the healers. So for PvE healing, I would highly recommend this build. Consecration is kinda useless for healers in dungeons and raids, but if you're tight on cash and don't want to respec that often, then you can lose 1 point and improve lay on hands and get consecration instead. 2 points in lasting judgment is a must. If you have 2 to 3 melee in your group, judge Blessing of Light on the boss, since if you've got your Beacon of Light on your tank, not only are your melee healing themselves, but all the healing they do from hitting the boss also goes to the tank as well. If you've got a lot of ranged DPS in your group instead of melee, you can use Blessing of Wisdom and judge that on the boss instead and increase the mana regen of your raid in general. For PvP, this is the build I use. Consecration is a must, as it's a good rogue and feral druid deterrent. And equally important is Unyielding Faith, increasing your chance to resist fear and disorient effects by 10%. You will have one loose talent to kind of put an either improve lay on hands, or personally I use it in lasting judgment, so at least then when I use Blessing of Light it lasts 18 seconds rather than 8. Firstly, I'll cover the worst rune slot for Holy Paladins, which is the chest rune. I don't really like how we kind of got shafted on this slot. Horn of Lordaeron is alright in PvE. Divine Storm can be fun to use every now and then in dungeons and adds a little heal. Aegis is alright in PvP, but generally we're lacking a good rune for the chest slot for Holy Paladins. I personally think they should have swapped Horn of Lordaeron with Inspiration Exemplar or Rebuke, because at least then, mainly in PvP, would have some options at least. So next let's move on to our hand slot. For a Holy Paladin there are 2 options. First is Crusader Strike, which doesn't do much damage, but we regen 5% of our mana each time we use this spell. So this is good for certain fights where you can stay close and have some breathing room. The second option is my main go-to, and that is Beacon of Light. Since they've dropped the mana cost of this dramatically, this is a lot stronger and effectively giving you the ability to heal 2 targets at once, or another way to look at it is you're getting a free flash of light every time you use it. Either option is good, and I personally think there are edge cases for both. I do use Beacon of Light a lot more. I think this is the stronger out of the 2, but it really depends on your playstyle and rune composition. For waste runes, Infusion of Light only increases the damage dealt by Holy Shock and not the healing. The reset on the crit only works when dealing damage with Holy Shock, so for healers this is not very good. The second is Enlightened Judgment, which increases our judgment abilities range to 40 yards in total and increases our hit chance with spells by 17%, which can be useful in PvP, but generally I only really use Sheath of Light, which is the third option. In my opinion, it's definitely the strongest for a healer. Every melee hit you gain 30% of your attack power converted to spell damage and healing. This paired with any heal that crits gains an additional 60% of the healing done as a heal over time effect. In raids this has given me an average of about 10 to 15% extra healing over the duration of the fight. For healing, this rune is by far the best for this slot. For leg runes there's some choice. Inspiration Exemplar is alright, but it doesn't seem to proc that much, so I generally avoid this. But it can be viable if you're going to be against a lot of warlocks and priests and they're going to fear spam. Rebuke is good for certain situations, but generally these 2 should have been on the chest rune as I said earlier. Exorcism and Avenger's Shield can be good as well, but generally, like, there's only one rune I really use as a healer, and that's Divine Sacrifice. This, in my opinion, is the strongest leg rune for Holy Paladins, especially with the fast time to kill at the minute. Absorbing 30% of your party's incoming damage can be the difference between life and death, as you can throw your beacon of light on yourself, then pop Divine Sacrifice and heal your party while topping yourself off as well so you don't die. For boot runes, we have two options. The first is Art of War. This reduces the mana cost of our Exorcism and Holy Shock abilities by 80%, which is huge, and resets their cooldown when we crit with melee attacks. This can be good with the melee healer build, although I think it's a lot weaker than the most efficient healing ability we have, with its absorption value alone pays for itself without adding any of the additional benefits it gives us, this being Sacred Shield. So let's talk about Sacred Shield. For a Holy Healing Paladin, this is a must on your boot rune. So how it works is for 30 seconds you place a buff on the target. Each time that target takes damage, it creates a shield that lasts for 6 seconds, absorbing around 120 damage. This effect can only occur once every 6 seconds. Meaning, if you're being attacked constantly, the maximum amount of procs you can get is 5 per use, so 5 procs per 30 seconds. This video shows the effect of this spell. As seen, it keeps proccing each time it does. 120 damage is absorbed, for a total of 600 damage absorbed for 118 mana, which is also increased further by your spell damage. For the exact calculation of how much the spell damage affects the absorption amount, I'm unsure. Additionally, while the shield procs, your Flash of Light has a 50% chance to crit, and will also do an additional 100% of the amount healed as a heal over time over 12 seconds. This paired with Sheath of Light is really strong, as essentially you will have 2 hots up most of the time while Sacred Shield is up. And because of your Illumination talent, which when you crit makes your heals cost nothing, makes this even stronger. As a combination of those 2 runes and the talent of Illumination, Sacred Shield is really strong at the moment. Here are some examples of different rune compositions for different playstyles I use. So stat wise, we want to prioritize spell crit, then healing and spell power, then intellect and mana per 5. Spirit is pointless compared to the raw mana per 5, as I will show you now. As seen on my character info, I have 22.13 mana per 5 from Spirit, for a total of 70 mana per 5 while not casting, and only 5 mana per 5 while casting. When I add Blessing of Wisdom, which gives us a 20 mana per 5 seconds increase, you'll also see that our mana per 5 while casting increases by 20. Spirit is not very good for paladins, as you'll be casting most of the time, so generally try and avoid it. Stacking spell crit, intellect comboed with mana per 5 is the way to go for a healthy mana pool for a holy paladin. Gear for holy paladins in vanilla has always been lacking. Most healing gear is cloth with a lot of spirit. There are a few token plate healing items once you get to endgame, but the only real plate healing gear is the tier 3 set. In SoD they've added a few spell damage plate items that are okay for healing as well, although I would love to see them actually add some plate healing, or at the very least maybe some mail healing items. Again, all the healing items they've added in SoD so far are mainly cloth, and all of it's got lots of spirit on, which is kind of pointless for a paladin. Especially if you want to be a PvP healer, wearing cloth is not a good idea. The only plate healing item that is in phase 2 is the gloves from Ordman, and these gloves can be a random stat chance, so you could get gloves of the spirit, owl, bear, whatever, but there is a very small chance you will get them of healing, which they've got about 32 to 36 healing, I believe. But this makes it a 0.03% chance to get these gloves. And that being the case, most paladins will never see that item. Flash of Light is your main heal and the most efficient way to keep your mana pool healthy. Avoid using Holy Light as much as you can, as this is a quick way to go although some situations you are forced to use it, and knowing when you can and can't is what makes a good paladin or a bad paladin healer. You should always save your Divine Favor for Holy Light, as it gives you a free heal that's very potent. Sacred Shield has no cooldown and can be thrown on multiple people at once. In PvP I use this a lot, although you've got to be careful because if you go too mad with this, you can yourself out. A Blessing of Light is my main go-to when healing in PvP. Normally if I'm with my guildies, I'll slap this on most of them, since the healing bonus is really good. Blessing of Freedom will save you and your party's lives, especially now that hunters can throw their frost traps about, and shamans can also teleport their totems 30 yards, so yeah, it's a lot more powerful now. Blessing of Protection will save squishy people like healers and casters from death in PvP, or can be used to drop aggro from someone in PvE and give the tank a chance to kind of get threat back. Maxing out the Spiritual Focus talent, which gives us a 70% chance to ignore spell pushback, combining that with Concentration Aura, which gives us a 35% chance to ignore spell pushback, for a total of 105% chance to ignore spell pushback, meaning your spells can't be pushed back at all, apart from obviously if you get interrupt effects like kick, silence, counter spell and whatnot. This is very good in PvP, since you can spam heal while being attacked by pets, priest homunculi and melee all on you at once. And finally, Hammer of Justice is just awesome. Generally, I think Paladins are in a really good spot at Phase 2 at the minute. It'll be interesting to see how they take them in Phase 3. Paladins are probably one of the stronger out of the healers at the minute. I would like in the future to see a bit more gear aimed towards Holy Paladins, especially healing ones. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a comment and consider hitting that like, subscribe and slap that bell icon for future videos. All the music used in my videos is available on my second channel, Hextera Music. I'm Hextera, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.